I do not.
Good afternoon, Secretary Samuelson. Are you guys all set?
We are all set.
Okay, great. All right, I'll call to order the Green Mountain Care Board's hearing of October 8th, 2025. We have two substantive agenda items. The first, we're going to hear from the Agency of Human Services and Secretary Jenny Samuelson relating to a healthcare transformation update. I presume will be an executive session for that. And then after that, we have an ACO regulatory update and a rule review that Michelle Sawyer will walk us through. I'm going to turn it to our Executive Director, Emily Brown, to walk us through a little bit to introduce the transformation update.
Great. Thank you, Chair Foster. Abby, would you be able to put up the slides?
Yep, doing that right now.
Great, thank you. All right, so today we will be hearing a presentation from Secretary Samuelson, her team on the Vermont Rural Health Transformation Fund and its relationship to the CMS AHEAD model. Next slide. There is a potential executive session to discuss this work. Next slide, Abby. And here is a summary of the executive session law. Can wait on this one for a few seconds just to make sure people have an opportunity to read this. And next slide. And here we have proposed motion language to enter into executive session.
Great, thank you. Based on my understanding of the content of the material, I don't think there's any portion of this that's appropriate for the public at this time. And I did want to publicly thank the Agency of Human Services and Secretary Samuelson for providing us an overview in their time today. With that noted, I will move that the board find that premature general public knowledge regarding AHS's proposed strategy for the Rural Health Transformation Fund application and its relation to proposed policy and operational changes to the AHEAD model would clearly place the board, the Agency of Human Services, and Vermont at a substantial disadvantage in future negotiations with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. And the motion carries. I also move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to consider AHS's proposed strategy for the Rural Health Transformation Fund application and its relation to the proposed policy and operational changes to the AHEAD model. Attendance will be limited to board members, board staff working on AHEAD model, the Agency of Human Services, secretary and staff, and representatives of the Office of the Healthcare Advocate.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, and the motion carries. For the public who's in attendance, I'm going to presume that we'll be about an hour and 15, maybe we'll call it an hour and a half. So till 2:30, and we'll note if it will be extended or take less time in a public notice. And with that, we can take a recess from this hearing and we'll move to the executive session. Thank you. Okay, we can resume the public session of our hearing today. I see Michelle Sawyer's here. Michelle, are you all set?
I am, thank you. I'll get
Great.
my slide deck sharing here momentarily. All right. Thanks, everyone. We are here today to give an update on the rulemaking process in regards to the draft ACO oversight rule. We will kick it off with just a really brief history of what ACO regulation at the Green Mountain Care Board has looked like over the years, a review of the recent statutory changes, and then we'll go through the draft rule at a high level and look at what's changed. We'll touch on the timeline for this rulemaking process, and of course, there will be an opportunity for discussion, a potential vote, and public comment. So here's some history about what ACO regulation has looked like at the Green Mountain Care Board. First, we'll define an accountable care organization. It's a group of healthcare providers who agree to be accountable for the care and cost of a defined population of patients. And when we talk about a Vermont ACO, an ACO is considered to be operating in Vermont when they are contracting with Vermont providers on behalf of Vermont beneficiaries. So it wouldn't be an ACO that, in Florida that provided care for, snowbirds who might be Vermont residents. It's really the connection between the ACO and the Vermont provider that makes an ACO a Vermont ACO. So back in 2016, Act 113 charges the Green Mountain Care Board with the oversight of ACOs here in Vermont. Act 113 allowed for Vermont to implement the all-payer ACO model and gave the Green Mountain Care Board that authority over ACOs to regulate them. In 2017, the Green Mountain Care Board, in response to that, adopted Rule 5, which established standards and processes to certify ACOs and annually review, modify, and approve their budgets. And then we entered the all-payer model that ran from 2018 and concludes at the end of this year. So in June of this year, Governor Scott signed Act 62 into law. This law, among other changes, modified how the Green Mountain Care Board regulates ACOs operating in Vermont per 18 VSA 9382. These green boxes on the slide give a very high-level summary of what changed. So with this act going into law, now all ACOs must be certified by the Green Mountain Care Board. And that will take place as of January 1, 2027. Also, only ACOs contracting with Vermont Medicaid or Vermont commercial payer must have their budget reviewed by the Green Mountain Care Board. Previously, it was kind of flip-flopped. The only ACOs required to be certified were those contracting with Vermont Medicaid or Vermont commercial payer, and then all ACOs in Vermont needed their budget to be reviewed by the Green Mountain Care Board. To date, the only certified ACO that Vermont has had is OneCare Vermont. And then going forward, after they close at the end of this year, we don't anticipate any other ACOs contracting with Vermont Medicaid or commercial payers. So we are not looking at any budget reviews for ACOs in 2026 or beyond, to the best of our knowledge. There is also, along with these changes, a new regulatory fee structure. It moves from all ACOs sharing a set percentage of the Green Mountain Care Board's regulatory expenses to a flat fee schedule. It offers a lot more predictability for these regulated entities. And so the fee for an initial certification would be $10,000 per ACO. The annual eligibility verification would be $2,000 per ACO, and a budget review, should we need to do one, would be $125,000 per ACO. So the change in statute necessitates the Green Mountain Care Board to update its Rule 5 to align with this new statute. I wanted to share our policy statement around the regulation of accountable care organizations here at the Green Mountain Care Board. So we really want to strike a balance between enabling Vermont providers to participate in innovative alternative payment models and ensuring that ACOs operate transparently and in the best interest of Vermont's patients and providers. So we're really going from a more prescriptive, all-payer model-based set of criteria and requirements for ACOs to a more broad look and way of regulating these entities. And so for ACOs that do decide to contract with Vermont Medicaid or commercial payers, the Green Mountain Care Board will review each one of those ACOs' budgets. And that's so that we can promote accountability, safeguard public resources, and ensure responsible stewardship of those Vermont healthcare dollars. I wanted to share some rules that we've put in place as far as the rule goes, specifically, and for the rulemaking process. So we want this rule to be legally sound. We want it to comply with statute. We want it to be enforceable, and we want it to be able to withstand challenges. We want all of our rules to be aligned with the Green Mountain Care Board's mission to advance the board's statutory purpose and policy priorities. We want our rule to be clear and practical. We want it to be written in accessible language and easy for stakeholders to follow. And we really want to avoid areas where interpretation is unintentionally vague, but still offers flexibility when appropriate. And this one's important. We want this rule to be sustainable. We want to have a rule that can remain relevant and adaptable over time, and to really be agnostic to any federal model in which the state may be participating in. And lastly, for the rule, we want it to be balanced. We want to balance the oversight of ACOs, patient and provider protection, and the ability for providers to partner with ACOs should they so choose to do. And then goals for the rulemaking process. We want this process to really be transparent. We want it to be open, documented, and understandable to the public. We want it to be inclusive. We want plenty of opportunities for stakeholders to participate. We are doing our best to be efficient as well. We want to stay on track with our timelines and make good use of staff and board resources. And lastly, we would love to see this be trust building. We want to foster confidence in the board's processes and authorities. All right, and so now we'll start to dig into the real meat of things. We'll look at this draft rule. I did want to note there has been a draft posted on our website for several days. It was just updated this morning with a few additional changes. I encourage folks to follow along throughout this presentation, but I will call out where changes have been made since that initial posting on October 1st. So the draft rule as it currently stands was really built on Rule 5. We started there. And then, of course, we had to make sure that each part of the draft rule was supported by the changes made to the statute. We then cross-referenced what we had with federal ACO REACH requirements and 42 CFR Part 425, which are the Medicare Shared Savings Program requirements. And what we did was we found any useful requirements identified in those and added them to our own rule. And then wherever we found duplicative oversight, we removed those because we didn't feel it necessary if the federal government has particular requirements that we are also requiring that ACOs report that to us. And we removed all payer ACO model specific language throughout Rule 5, which resulted in quite a bit of a reduction in just the length and breadth of the draft rule. And there were a few circumstances where requirements previously associated with a budget review were moved over to certification and vice versa. Just having lived and worked with this rule for a few years now, finding that there was better arrangements for some of those requirements. All right, so we'll start with section 5.1, the general provisions. We did update the purpose section of this rule just to describe the changes in statute and why this rule is evolving over time. We removed and added definitions as the rule itself changed. We updated applicability to make it clear what kind of ACOs are subject to what kind of regulation in the rule. And we did change a requirement around confidentiality requests. They must now be submitted along with the materials requested to be treated confidentially. This is really just an administrative kind of cleanup that we did. Previously, regulated entities could submit materials, but then had several days to submit confidentiality requests, which led to just additional burden of posting materials publicly and having to take them back down and all of that. So that will hopefully resolve a little bit of burden there. All right, section 5.2 digs into ACO certification requirements. There is a subset of additional requirements for ACOs contracting with Vermont Medicaid or a Vermont commercial insurer. So really what that looks like is you'll see some of the criteria that are drafted are only applicable for those types of ACOs. And this is because there is federal oversight for Medicare Shared Savings Program ACOs and ACO REACH entities. And we also felt that there, in some instances, those should also be applicable to all ACOs. A good example is the complaint and grievance process. So CMS actually is the one who collects complaints and grievances for these Medicare-only ACOs. And we wanted to ensure that there was a requirement for an ACO contracting with Vermont Medicaid or commercial insurer that they had appropriate mechanisms to handle complaint and grievances and making sure that they are reviewing them and responding appropriately. We are no longer requiring the use of a consumer advisory board for all ACOs. And we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Section 5.206, which previously was the population health management and care coordination section, was eliminated. The reason behind this is that this section truly was mostly all payer model language. And it was very prescriptive. It was prescriptive about how ACOs should design their model of care and how they should manage population health and care coordination. And with the framing of the statute, eliminating that and really looking to open up the requirements, we needed the rule to reflect that as well. So no longer are we prescribing how ACOs handle population health and care coordination, but we will, you'll see later on, collect information about how they are addressing these issues. And then lastly, for this section, section 5.210 is public reporting and transparency. Previously, it had just lived in a different section of the rule, and we moved this up to the certification requirements. All right, 5.3 are the certification procedures. So the application for submission is due October 1st of the year preceding planned operation in Vermont, with the governing body information due before December 1st. This is a new edit since the initial publishing of this draft on our website. This was in response to some public comment that we got that the original date that we had put was September 1st, but we now understand that really doesn't work for the contracting timeline for MSSPs. So by making it due October 1st, they hopefully have their final provider contracts in place. And November 1st, they had recommended that we do November 1st as the deadline for the application. However, a single month is not enough time for the staff and the board to have a thorough verification process. So if there is additional information, such as the governing body finalization that needs to be submitted slightly later, there is flexibility in the rule for that. Next, it notes that the filing fee that were discussed previously, they need to be submitted along with the initial application and with each annual verification. We added the requirement that ACOs must submit any pre-termination notices received from CMS in the prior 3 budget years. This is just making sure that the board and the public are aware of any potential issues that the ACO has run into with CMS and compliance with their own rules and requirements. We added the requirement that ACOs must submit a description of the use of benefit enhancement waivers. In the previous rule, there was no mention of benefit enhancement waivers, but we've seen throughout the years that these are becoming more common, and it is, useful to see the creative ways different ACOs are using these waivers. And then lastly, in this section, the board must provisionally approve of conditions or deny a certification application by December 31st of the year the application was submitted. Prior to this, there was really no end date, but this really creates a season for certification that runs from October 1st when the application is submitted to December 31st when the board must make their determination. All right, 5.4 is the section that talks about the review of ACO budgets and payer programs. So should the Green Mountain Care Board be reviewing any ACO budgets, written budget decisions will need to be issued by January 1st. This is another instance where previously there was no date, but we thought it best that, similar to how hospital budgets are handled, the decisions need to come out at the first of the program year. Next, ACOs must submit documentation reflecting the ACO's use of Medicaid and commercial insurer funds to enhance and expedite Vermont's healthcare system transformation efforts. And the next one is new as well. The ACOs must submit information on the ACO's efforts to prevent duplication of services being provided effectively and efficiently by existing community-based providers in the same geographic area. And I think both of those last 2 bullets really get at the fact that when an ACO is using Vermont Medicaid or Vermont commercial insurer funds, the board wants a little bit more insight into how those funds are being used and making sure that they are being, used to really enhance the statewide healthcare reform goals. Also, in the budget review section, ACOs must submit descriptions of how they consider consumer input. Like I said earlier, we're no longer requiring that they have a designated consumer advisory board, but we want to know how they are considering consumer input. We feel as though the Office of the Healthcare Advocate has been a really strong partner in being able to, bring the board the voice of the consumer. We also know these ACOs we are requiring these ACOs to report any complaints and grievances to us at least twice a year. And we do always have a public comment option for consumers at any time should they want to reach out directly to us about ACOs. ACOs are also required to have consumers on their governance boards. So if they partner with Medicaid and if they partner with a Vermont commercial insurer, they need beneficiaries of those particular payers to be on their governance board. So I think there's lots of opportunity for consumer input without needing to require an advisory board. And then lastly, we did our best to pare down the budget review to be really financially focused. We just talked about kind of a few other issues, but outside of those, we really want the budget review to be a financially focused review of these ACOs. Section 5.5 is monitoring and enforcement. So ACOs must report any pre-termination notices received from CMS within 15 days of its occurrence. And likewise, this this particular part was added even after the most recent draft was posted to our website. ACOs must report changes to its Vermont provider network within 15 days of its occurrence. And the thought here is, if for some reason an ACO cuts a contract short mid-year, it can really impact a provider's own internal budget and plans for the rest of the year. And it's good if, if the board is able to get a pulse on that and just let that be known publicly so that other areas of state government, other community providers are aware of this happening to one of Vermont's providers, so that we can look to support them the best that we can. We did remove some language around the board's authority to limit, suspend, or revoke certification of an ACO should an ACO fail to adhere to established quality measures. There isn't an instance, I don't think, where the board would establish quality measures for an ACO, so we felt this language was no longer relevant. But we did add language around the board's authority to limit, suspend, or revoke certification of an ACO should an ACO fail to meet any of the requirements outlined in the statute, 18 VSA 9382A1. And then the very last section, the only thing that changed was the date that this rule shall become effective, and it is July 1st, 2026. All right, and here's the timeline for the rulemaking process as we have currently outlined. So we had our first public comment period that ran from October 1st through the 7th. We can certainly extend that if the vote today doesn't happen. And we're here today for the staff presentation and the Green Mountain Care Board vote that is noticed. If the board desires, we can come back October 22nd, which is 2 weeks from now, and consider a vote at that time. And should that go forward, we are slated to submit the draft rule to ICAR, which is the first kind of official kickoff to the formal state of Vermont rulemaking process. We have another public comment period slated for the entirety of December. And we'll have another Green Mountain Care Board hearing and staff presentation on December 3rd to give folks an opportunity to speak up at that time as well. And even beyond that time, beyond December and that particular Green Mountain Care Board hearing, the board certainly has additional opportunities to make changes or edits to this rule and would just need to hold a vote anytime updates needed to happen. And ideally, should everything, run according to plan, we would have the rule finalized in March or April of 2026. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Chair Foster.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sawyer. I'll open up to the other board members for questions or comments. Go ahead,
I'll
Sarah.
jump. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. So I think you did a great job, Michelle. My only question is about the timing of when the decisions are going to be made. You've chosen a state holiday. And I just question really whether that's what you want to do. Think about it. Do we want to have final decisions made on a state holiday?
Sure. You're referring to the January 1 date?
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. We could certainly, I think that is officially the start of these program years and fiscal years for these organizations. I think certainly best practice would to get it out before then. But that is I would say our backup date should we not be able to get that done. If the board wishes, we could certainly look at January 2 as well, and I'm sure that would be adequate.
Just thinking you want to make sure you give yourself the time you need. And can you explain again, just to back up, the public comment asked for November 1st to be the date, and you delayed it beyond that?
So the public comment from the ACO had requested that the application date be November 1st. We had drafted September 1st, and they explained to us that their final provider contracts aren't due until after September 1st, so they would not be able to give us a final roster of providers until, after September. And the second part was that they are not required by CMS to have their governance board finalized until late October. So that's where that November 1 date came from. What the staff attempted to do was give both the board as an entity time to process these applications and discuss them and make it work as best we can with these ACOs schedules. So we moved it to October 1st for most of the submission. And then if their governance body roster is not finalized by that October 1st date, they can submit that piece of information to us as late as November 1st.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other board member comments or questions?
I don't have any. Thank you, Michelle.
I don't either. Thank you so much, Michelle, though I know there's a lot of hard work that went into this, so thank you.
And I'll open up to public comment. Actually, I'm sorry. I'll start with the healthcare advocate.
No problem at all. Thank you, Michelle and team. This is a pretty arcane and technical area, so I wanted to appreciate you for all the work that went into it.
By GMCB standards, to call something arcane is really something. Oh, thanks for the comment, Sam. Any other public comment? Okay, great. Michelle, thanks for all the work on all the board member 2x2s and preparing this, and to our legal staff for assisting you. Any other old or new business for the board?
Excuse me, Chair Foster, I do have motion language if you wish to approve the draft rules as described today, or I'm happy to come back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sorry. Why don't we introduce it? I wouldn't mind leaving the comment open. We can introduce it and then come back.
Okay, sounds great.
So I won't actually make the motion. So if you would just read it so people have it, and then we can take it up later.
Sure, you want me to read it just so that people can hear it? Sure.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the draft proposed rule, GMCB Rule 5, Oversight of Accountable Care Organizations, as presented today as a replacement for the current rule, GMCB Rule 5, as adopted on November 2nd, 2017. Green Mountain Care Board staff are authorized to proceed with formal rulemaking under the Vermont Administrative Procedure Act.
And I'll just leave this open for comment for I think a week before we come back. And then were there other slides?
That is all for the presentation.
Okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Any new or old business for the board? Okay, then I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye, and we're adjourned. Thank you.